First panel, it is connected with the main issue, what does good government mean? It is important for us to have some framework, to have some working definition about this. Just to mention as a starting point, the interpretation of United Nations. From United Nations point of view, what good governance means. First, governance. It is written that the concept of governance, simply good governance, the process of decision making, and the process by which decisions are implemented or not implemented. Governance can be used in several contexts, such as corporate governance, international governance, national governance, and of course local governance. Good governance has 8 major characteristics. It is particularly consensus-oriented, accountable, transparent, responsive, effective and efficient, equitable and inclusive, and follows the rule of law. It assures that the corruption is minimized, the views of minorities are taken into account, and that the voices of the most vulnerable in society are heard in decision making. It is also responsive to the present and future needs of society. This is just as a starting point of our discussion. Of course, I hope that our guests, our participants and panelists will clarify deeply this issue, what does good governance means in different contexts and from the different points of view. Now, this morning, we have 3 panelists. It is my friend John Jackson. We had a lot of common work together in the near past. His topic is essential leadership for good governance. The second panelist, it is Dr. Gilberto Mazzano. Hello, good morning.
Hello.
His topic is new challenges for social services. And the third one, it is Dr. Margherita Baran. Margherita
Wojciech.
Correct?
Two speakers, but only one.
Because they are two. Okay. Dr. Wojciech Góranowski. All right. Okay. The topic is social innovation Paul. It is Polish story, huh? Polish narrative about this. Okay, allow me to give the floor to John Jackson. A few words. It is written, of course, in the program, but let me focus your attention to the background of John, author and long-time lecturer of the program on Leadership Academy of Council of Europe. He has worked in and for local government since 1983 at local, national and international levels. He worked at UK Office of Deputy Prime Minister to introduce local government reform in England. He was the seconded to the Council of Europe for 4 years to develop Council of Europe's function of supporting local government in Eastern Europe. For the last 11 years, he has been a local government consultant for various organizations both within and beyond Europe, focusing more recently on strengthening leadership in local government. It is my pleasure to give the floor to John. John,
Thank you.
please.
I think I'll stand up, otherwise my words will have to go through every ear hole to get to the end on this side, and I won't be able to look at your eyes. And communication is through the eyes. Well, it's nice to meet some of you, old friends again, after not 7 years, 14 years, I think.
14, yes, indeed.
And new ones. My task is to, I think, bring together this idea of good governance and leadership on the basis of actually leadership is an essential component in delivering good governance. And I want to start with where I'm coming from. Back in 1999, Tony Blair was elected as Prime Minister in England, in Great Britain, and he came in with a strong mandate to change local government, because local government was in pretty poor shape. And in that time, 2 or 3 years before, there were 3 local government associations, because they never have the same opinion. But once you have one association, you have strong voice. And it was the association of councils, the very poor performance of so many councils. Can we do something about it? So they asked us in government to introduce by law a performance management regime. And so we did. We worked very closely as partners with the Local Government Association and with the Audit Commission. And we introduced by law the local performance management regime that they felt they wanted. Now, 50%, 60% of the councils who are on the better half of the spectrum, the more competent half, this is what they wanted. They were doing what they were good at. They could use performance information, performance data to drive up performance. The 40%, the other 40% struggled. Why did they struggle? They couldn't integrate this performance management approach into their existing way of working. It was seen as a government, an external initiative. Tick box when the auditors came. They couldn't reach a position where staff could use data to drive up their own performance and want to use data to drive up their own performance. So we then realised that a key issue, a key missing element in this 40% was leadership. They lacked the leadership. Now, I remember one example, 2 primary schools in London, in a fairly poor area, but from the same catchment area. One was good, one was bad. One got good results, children went on with good results, the others didn't. What was the difference? The head had been able to capture, to engage the parents in the running of the school, and he'd be able to put ambition into the children. The other head had followed the rules and procedures of the school, but he hadn't created that ambition and he hadn't engaged the parents. And this, I think this encapsulated this issue of leadership. How do you put leadership back into local government? So we developed a benchmark. And it was benchmark setting out what are the challenges you need to face if you're going to deliver good governance. And we used peer review, and in the course of the next few years, some 3/4 of the municipalities went through this benchmarking process. And it made a big difference. It's a very powerful tool. And then a lot of chief executives lost their jobs because of it, because for the first time the politicians realised what were the stumbling blocks. Then I came to the Council of Europe, and we developed programmes. Eventually, my focus came more on the leadership in other countries. And this is quite difficult, because we all have very different concepts of leadership. The benchmark can tell you what you have to do. It doesn't tell you how you do it. So I started working on an academy, a more in-depth learning approach for mayors and their colleagues, so that over 6 months, 3 stages of 3 days each, we could begin to get into their mindsets. Because leadership starts in the mind, the mindset. And I'll share a bit with you what some of these ideas and thoughts of leadership are. In your folders, you have a set of slides, and I shall talk to them, so if you'd like to take them out, we'll go through them one at a time. first question is, what do we mean by leadership? There's no agreement on what it means. People have different ideas. I don't think in French there is an exact translation of the word leadership. I think the word in Polish that you use, when you translate it back into English, it tends to mean the people at the top. When you read English newspapers, it often refers to the people at the top. Leadership has failed, as you might have seen in our recent election a few weeks ago in England. Leadership is a word, it comes from an old Nordic word, leader, meaning to navigate. So if any of you have had any connections with the Vikings, you probably begin to have this in your psyche, this initial meaning of leadership, to navigate. So you see in the first page, interpreting leadership, you have a number of ways of interpreting leadership. In a bureaucracy, within a bureaucracy, how do you express leadership if you're a civil servant? It's often a balance between keeping, if you're in a bureaucracy, to get ahead, you have to keep to rules and principles and rules and regulations. If you change, if you go outside the rules, you often don't go very far up the hierarchy. So it's this balance between rules and principles. And so leadership in the civil service is seen as someone who actually knows the system, because you get promotion by knowing the system, know how to get things done through the system. If you see a newspaper heading saying, Mayor has delivered this new water supply system, lots of credit to the Mayor. But actually, who actually delivered the water supply system? The Mayor probably had a very small role to play. You had the staff, you had the engineers, you had community discussions, you had a range of leadership, but Mayor takes the credit. So Mayor is there at the front, the person at the top taking the credit. So I want to give you another meaning of it. If you turn over, different perspectives of leadership. Starting personal leadership on your own, yourself. How do you exercise leadership? Going up to the team, going up to the organisation, going beyond to the community. Now, a key difference between government and governance. It's up to 15 years ago or so. Mayors focused on how do we make our own organisation stronger? How do we get more resources? How do we deliver services more effectively? There wasn't much communicating with the outside world. It was focused on the organisation. And this is one of the things governance does. It actually puts this top one, community. What does it mean for a mayor or for staff to have community leadership? And in fact, we put in a law about community leadership soon after the performance information. Look down, next slide. It says leadership landscapes. If you imagine someone joining your organisation to start with, their landscape starts at the top, very personal. They want to get their job done right. They don't want to make mistakes, they want to please the boss. Then gradually they get to realise the wider team and what the rest of the team does. So their leadership landscape gets a bit wider. And then they go further up over the years, they get promoted to management, to senior management, they develop an organisation landscape. Their perspective is the organisation. And then as they grow more wise, they begin to understand other local authorities. Where can they find best practice? What is the policy of local government across the board? They have a local government perspective. Then higher above that, they begin to understand the social, the economic, the financial forces that affect local government. Now, one of the problems is that leadership often stops somewhere in the middle there. So if you have a good engineer who has a team and he likes his engineering work and suddenly he's promoted into management, does he have the landscape for the organisation that you need if he's going to do a good management job? And if he has this engineering mindset and he's stuck in an engineering mindset, then often he operates at a lower level. He tries to micromanage. He looks at the engineering issues. He looks at the detailed issues without understanding the wider landscape. So I come to the bottom of the picture, bottom of the page, which is, I think, the most important of the slides. I treat leadership, everybody is capable of leadership. We all have that capacity for leadership, and we make a choice. Do we use it or do we not use it? Some of you here are women. Hands up, any of you women have children? If you want, so you have a woman with children, managing a job, managing a husband. If you want to see good leadership, find a woman in that situation. Juggling these things, making their days work out, is a tough task. You can find leadership in any situation. Any of you, let me ask another question. Let me ask my friend here. Can I ask you something?
Yes, of course.
Do you ever have a shower?
Shower?
Yes.
Okay, yes. Of
Yes.
course.
More important question. Do you ever have do you always have the shower by yourself, or do you ever have it with someone else?
So and so.
If you have the shower by yourself,
Uh-huh.
you can never practice leadership.
Uh-huh.
You can't practice leadership by yourself, because leadership lies in the relationships you have with other people. So if you want to practice leadership in the shower, you know what to do. So leadership has to be earned, because people have to acknowledge your leadership. So it becomes very important, that relationship. How do you manage that relationship with other people? And most important of all, if you turn over, the role of leadership is actually to encourage leadership in others, to bring out the leadership in others. If we start from the premise that everybody has the capacity for leadership, then the role of leadership is to bring out the leadership for others. Now think how revolutionary this idea is when you're thinking of those traditional hierarchies, when it was impossible to work like this. Now, I created this Leadership Academy. There's some 50, 60 reference books behind it, and lots of theories. And they're all very interesting reading, and I've just put 2 or 3 down here. What do we mean by leadership? A framework for leadership. I'm not going to go through them. Motivating purpose, etc. The next one, enthusiasm, energy, hope, turnover, teamwork, direction, flexibility. The next one, model the way, etc. Different authors, different specialists coming with their different views on leadership over the last 20 years. One of the things I like most is that one at the top of the page. It's very simple. In New York, several years ago, there was a survey of chief executive officers of multinationals in New York by the staff. What did the staff of these multinational companies think were the most important leadership characteristics of the chief executive officer? Do you know what they said? Do you know the first one? Very strong sense of direction. They knew where they were going, and they would find their way of getting there. They didn't give up. But the second one was surprising. Humility. Can you imagine humility amongst the people, the senior management that you know? Humility. In the sense that the ability to listen, to respect, to learn from others, not to pretend you've got the answers all the time. And this is what attracts people to the chief executives like that, because they are willing to listen. They treat you as partners, not as individuals to get a job done. So we come to the bottom of the page, and you have those little boxes. Leadership, and I mentioned at the beginning, we developed this benchmark, and the benchmark sets out what are the main challenges of a local authority, what are they there to do in terms of delivering good governance. That's the starting point. What is your challenge? And the dynamic is what is the organisation, the context you're working, how can you change your organisation to deliver good governance? And what are your own personal skills, abilities, attitude that you bring towards it? So starting point is the challenge. And this is interesting when it gets back to data and that performance management regime. I find many mayors in England and elsewhere